Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachah Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 20th chapter. There is a reproof that is not comely. Again, some man holdeth his tongue and is wise, right? So a reproof is like correction, and not all correction is comely, right? It's like calm or soft or, done in a sweet manner. Sometimes it's a rebuke. Sometimes you get cursed out. Okay. But it says, again, some man holdeth his tongue and he is wise. See, because some, at the right time, they know when not to speak, right? And that shows forth wisdom. It is much better to reprove than to be angry secretly. See, if somebody does wrong, it's better that you correct them, reprove, speak on it, than to hold it in, but secretly you're angry at him. And he that confesseth his fault shall be preserved from hurt. You see, because if you confess your fault, if you transgress against somebody and you confess before them, right, you make it good with them, you're going to be all right. And if you confess your faults before the Lord, then you make room for mercy, right? And that helps you escape judgment. How good is it when thou art reproved to show repentance? For so shalt thou escape willful sin. See, when you're reproved and you repent, you escape willful sin. Because if you're reproved and you harden your heart, then you are knowing, right, and being corrected, you're refusing that consciously. Okay, and you're willfully continuing on down that wrong path. As is the lust of a eunuch to deflower a virgin, right? A eunuch is, one that let's say doesn't deal with women or can't deal with women, and that lust they have to deflower a virgin, to take a woman's virginity. So is he that executeth judgment with violence. So it's saying here, just as a eunuch desires to be with a virgin, so is one that executes judgment with violence. Like they desire that. Verse 5, it says, there is one that keepeth silence and is found wise, and another by much babbling becometh hateful. See, there's some that, they don't talk much and they're counted wise, right? People look at them, you know what, this person, they don't talk much, but when they do talk, it's wisdom, it's good. And then there's one who becomes hateful by much babbling, meaning you talk and talk and talk and you talk so much, and now people you start to become hated. People don't want to be around you because all you do is talk. Some man holdeth his tongue, because he hath not to answer, and some keepeth silence, knowing his time. See, so there's some, they don't say anything because they don't know the answer, they don't have an answer for it. And some, they just don't speak because they don't think it's the right time to talk. And that's a showing forth of wisdom in both cases. A wise man will hold his tongue till he see opportunity, right, to the right time, and then he will speak. But a babbler and a fool will not regard, or will regard no time. So they're not going to be able to read the room, right? Telling jokes out of season, not knowing when is it appropriate to speak and when is it appropriate to say what versus when is it appropriate to just be quiet. He that useth many words shall be abhorred, and he that taketh to himself authority therein shall be hated. Useth many words is you talk too much. Eventually people are going to dislike you. And taketh one that taketh to himself authority therein shall be hated. That's basically somebody that, they speak as though they are the final authority, right? And that's like, no, who went up there, and gave you that authority? They just take that upon themselves, and as it says, they will be hated. There is a sinner that hath good success in evil things, and there is a gain that turneth to loss. So there's sometimes you have, as it says, a sinner, they may be doing something that's not good, but it may turn out to have, like, they may be good for a while, right? Whatever may come out of it might not be direct evil right away. And then sometimes there's the vice versa, right? There is a gain that turneth to loss. There's something that may seem beneficial, and then it ends up, doing more harm than good. There is a gift that shall not profit thee, and there is a gift whose recompense is double. See, so there's some some things you get, certain kind of gifts, they really are more destructive for you, and there are certain gifts that are more beneficial, right? And they give back, even more than you expect. It says, there is an abasement because of glory, and there is that lifteth up his head from a low state. Let's read that in the GNTD in verse 11. Honor can be followed by disgrace, but there are people who have risen from obscurity to places of honor, right? That's the contrast. There is that buyeth much for a little and repayeth it sevenfold. Okay, and that's basically, you have some people that they can gain, they gain value, right, from small effort. That is the buying much. They gain much from little, right? Little effort. Okay. And then they multiply their return, right, many times over. That's the repaying sevenfold. So some people, it just goes well with them like that. A wise man by his words maketh him beloved, but the graces of fools shall be poured out. Yeah, the scriptures tell you that what is that? Soft words, basically one that speaks good words maketh many friends, right? So a wise man by his words, he speaks good words in a good time, will make him beloved. People, this guy's cool. I like this guy, But the graces of fools shall be poured out, right? Nobody wants to hear, they don't even want to hear what a fool has to say, because they know it's going to be something that's either infuriating, stupid, or foolish. The gift of a fool shall do thee no good when thou hast it. Neither let the envious, or yet of the envious, for his necessity, for he looketh to receive many things for one. So basically, he may give you something, or he may lend something to you, but it's not gonna do you good, because it's not like a gift from the heart. They have the mindset that, oh, I gave you this, so I expect that you're gonna give me something in return, or I expect that because I gave you this, you got to give me 2 times as much, or something like that. So it's not really gonna do you any good. It's more like an unvocalized catch or string attached to it, and that's their expectations. He giveth little and upbraideth much. See, he openeth his mouth like a crier. So he'll give you, what he gives you is really not even all that, but he talks about it as though he just saved your life. He openeth his mouth like a crier. Today he lendeth, and tomorrow he will ask it again. That's why it's not good for you. He may lend you $1 today, and then 12:01 a.m. the next day, yo, you got my money? Bruh, I didn't even get to use $1. It says such an one is to be hated of God and man, because that's not charity. Okay, that's not being actually generous. That's just being a niggard. It says, the fool saith, I have no friends, I have no thank for all my good, or all my good deeds, and they that eat my bread speak evil of me. It says, reading this in the NLT, it says, then that fool will say, nobody likes me, nobody appreciates what I do for them. They'll take what I give them, but then talk about me behind my back. Well, given the behavior, right, the characteristics of what we read up above, why do you think that's the case? It says here, how often and of how many shall he be laughed to scorn? For he knoweth not aright what it is to have, and it is all one unto him as if he had it not. So they don't have the ability to discern. So obviously they're going to be laughed at, because when it says he knoweth not aright what it is to have, he doesn't know, the difference between actually having and not having. He doesn't know how to conduct himself. He doesn't know how to give a gift, right? He doesn't know what it means to actually, when you lend to somebody, proper etiquette. Okay, as it says, for it is all one unto him as if he had it not. Verse 18, it says, to slip upon a pavement is better than to slip with the tongue. So the fall of the wicked shall come speedily. And why is it better to slip on pavement than to slip with the tongue? Because you bust your ass, right? Say it snowed outside. Weather outside is... Anyway, it snowed outside, right? You slipped and boom. You sat on your ass. Boom. Okay. Maybe there was... You get up quick. You look around. Maybe it was somebody, some kid that's laughing. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Now, if you were to slip with your tongue and you were to say something out of pocket that you shouldn't have said, that's gonna, because you falling and getting up, you may have a little wound. Okay, you may have a little bruise, or maybe you just clean yourself. All right. If you say something, that's out, and it enters into people's minds. You can't go into their minds and take it out of their minds. So they're always gonna remember that. It's always gonna be in their head. So the damage caused by a slip of the tongue is actually more painful or more dangerous or devastating than slipping on pavement. So the fall of the wicked shall come speedily. An unseasonable tale will always be in the mouth of the unwise. An unseasonable tale is like your your story is just it's not said either in the right time or in the right way. Okay, and that shows forth one that is unwise. Like you're talking about one thing, right? Let's say there's somebody's going through something, and you say you try to give them an example or you try to give them some account of something that happened, and the point of what you're saying should be to comfort them, but it's making things worse. Okay, verse 20 says, "A wise sentence shall be rejected when it cometh out of a fool's mouth. Why? For he will not speak it in due season." So it may be a wise saying, but he's not, the wisdom in it is decreased, is diluted because he's not saying it at the right time and the right way. All right. Verse 21, there is that hindered or that is hindered from sinning through want, and when he taketh rest, he shall not be troubled. Meaning there's one that is due to lack. Maybe he's poor. He doesn't even have the means to go and sin. So when he goes to sleep, he's not troubled because he ain't done anything wrong. He can't even afford to do anything wrong. There is that destroyeth his own soul through bashfulness, and by accepting of persons overthroweth himself. Bashfulness, when you go into that word, it's like being timid. It says here, reluctant to draw attention to oneself, shy, reserved, retiring, okay, coy, timid. And that can actually work against you. You see that? Because you accept persons, right? Like because you don't want to ruffle any feathers, you'll say yes even when you should say no. You overthrow yourself because it's going to start to work against you. It says, there is that for bashfulness promiseth to his friend. So because you're afraid to say no, you go and say yeah, and maketh him his enemy for nothing. Because now you've this person is going to expect it, but maybe you can't even do it. But you went and said yes because you couldn't say no. Right? In the GNTD, it says, if you promise a friend something because you are too bashful to say no, you're needlessly making an enemy. Sometimes you got to say it as it is. A lie is a foul blot in a man, yet it is continually in the mouth of the untaught. See, for somebody that is, wise or upright to tell a lie, that's like a stain on your reputation. Okay, but for those that are untaught, that is their reputation, right? That's their daily bread. A thief is better than a man that is accustomed to lie, but they both shall have destruction in heritage. Because see, a thief, a thief might steal, he might steal, he might get caught, right? He might do it out of necessity. But one that is accustomed to lie, he's not lying once or twice, you can't trust him. You may have a trustworthy thief who out of desperation is stealing. Okay? But one that is accustomed to lie, how can you entrust anything to them? Yet both of them are still doing wrong, right? So they shall have destruction of heritage. The disposition of a liar is dishonorable, and his shame is ever with him. Taking a look in the GNTD, it says, a liar has no honor. He lives in constant disgrace. Okay, and let's look at that word disposition and see what they give us here. Disposition. A person's inherent qualities of mind and character, right? The way in which something is placed or arranged, or the constitution or the nature or character. So the character of a liar is dishonorable. You see that? And his shame is ever with him. Because he'll be known for being a liar, somebody that's not trustworthy. A wise man shall promote himself to honor with his words. See, by his wise words, it'll put him in high positions. It'll promote him. And he that hath understanding will please great men, right? Even great, like Solomon, for example, right? Even great men are going to be pleased by you. They're going to want to have you in their company. He that tilleth his land shall increase his heap, that is your harvest. And he that pleaseth great men shall get pardon for iniquity. Right. If you please the king and saying, they bring up charges on you, he can pardon you because of the favor he has for you. Verse 29, presents and gifts blind the eyes of the wise and stop his mouth that he cannot reprove. That's a bribe, right? The presents and gifts. And what it means by it doesn't mean the second you take the bribe, you can't see anymore, but it's like you can't see anymore. You deliberately turn a blind eye, as they say, to a matter that you shouldn't, and it stops his mouth. So instead of speaking the right thing and reproving, you just, you don't say anything. You just let it slide. Wisdom that is hid and treasure that is hoarded up, what profit is it is in them both? See, if you have wisdom and you hide it, it's like you never had it. If you have treasure and you don't use it and it's boarded up, you can't use it. What's the profit in having it? Better is he that hideth his folly than a man that hideth his wisdom. Because if you hide your folly, you can be looked at as wise because you hold your tongue. But if you hide your wisdom, then people might think you're a fool because you have wisdom, but nobody knows you have wisdom. So don't hide your wisdom, because wisdom, as we just read, it promotes, right? A wise man shall promote himself in honor with his words. Necessary patience in seeking the Lord is better than he that leadeth his life without a guide. See, so it's necessary. Sometimes you have to, suffer, and you got to go through the crooked ways of wisdom when you're seeking the Lord. But that's better than one that doesn't have a guide at all. Okay, because then they're completely, their life is up to ruin. They have no structure. And that brings us to the end of the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 20th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.